All right, everybody, new merch. We got some art done by artist Thomas C. Rogers. You may have seen some of his collabs with Devils of Dirt Hawking. He has also done some extensive work with Harley Davidson. There's no AI done here on our merch. Of course, our thumbnails are always AI, but check it out on sportingchancepod.com. We got pullovers, zip-ups, long sleeves, t-shirts, and of course, stickers.
And this podcast is brought to you by Mountain State Falconry Supply. Freshen up your gear or get ready for the micro season. Visit mountainstatefalconrysupply.com.
And don't forget to get the tightest braided equipment on the market at midnightfalconry.com.
If you haven't put a deposit down on your next hunting partner, now's the time. Contact Seth Roy at northmountaingoshawks.com for your next season's hunting partner.
Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of the Sporting Chance podcast. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Geoff Hirschi. Geoff, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I would contest you calling me a very special guest, but I'm happy to be here and look forward to having a conversation.
We're excited.
You've been a little challenging to nail down.
I haven't been that hard.
He's like a goshawk. He's just like a ghost. He's the gray ghost.
He's elusive.
He's elusive.
Maybe goshawks have worn off on me. I've been obsessed with them for the better part of 3 decades, and it might have worn off.
It's a possibility.
You originate from Seattle, Washington. More or less. Well, okay, let me start over. You started falconry in Seattle, Washington, correct?
Not quite. I started, as much as you can claim that I ever grew up, I grew up in Salt Lake. And the first year I was involved in falconry, I was in Salt Lake. And I moved to Seattle roughly 1 year into my apprenticeship and lived there for right around 30 years.
Wow.
So you were in Seattle for 30 years, huh?
Right around that, yeah.
I have to say, I've been to Seattle twice. And I think I know the direction it's went since I've been there. And I think the last time I was there was about 10 years ago. But I found that to be, as far as metropolitan cities are concerned, one of the coolest cities I've ever been to.
I'm not much of a city boy and I'm not much of a traveler fundamentally, but I really enjoyed it when I moved up there. It was a nice, relative from my perspective, it was a big metro area, and very, very safe when I first moved up there. You could, as a dude, I realized the perception of safety is a lot different than, say a small single woman, but I felt perfectly safe any time of day or night walking down any dark alley there. The last time I went into Seattle proper, though, was shortly after the infamous Summer of Love, and I saw a cop car up on blocks that had been abandoned.
Yeah.
So I haven't been there since all of that happened, and that's what I was alluding to when I know the direction it's went, and they have huge problems with homelessness and
a
lot of ramp. I don't know if crime is violent, but a lot of crime.
It absolutely has become very violent. There's been a lot of a large part of the problem there is the way I have referred to it as compassion without any common sense, just running amok. People that are very compassionate about downtrodden people being victims of the justice system. And I can agree that that's a problem, but there's a certain percentage of society that just needs to be locked up and kept safely away from the rest of us. And they don't have the common sense to keep those guys locked up. They're turning them loose and letting them run amok.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're speaking great language right now.
No. That's a great way to sum it up. No, I heard that.
You'd say you're being too soft.
No, I mean, I can agree to a certain degree, but yeah.
The last several years, there's been gang shootouts at 3 p.m. right in some of the downtown streets in the business districts.
Yeah, I'm lucky I missed those times. When I went there, it was still a really clean city. I was kind of impressed how clean the city was. But my understanding is things have changed a lot in recent years.
Yeah, you go back there now. Watch where you step on the sidewalk because it's messy.
Something about the Pacific Northwest is very alluring to me. It's very, very mysterious place.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of people can't handle the fact that it's cloudy from roughly the first part of September until 4th of July.
Bring it on. Good hawking weather.
I'm fine with that. Goshawks fly better in cloudy weather. We all know that.
Yep. But it's beautiful terrain. And if you get out of Seattle proper, and this also applies to Portland down in Oregon, and get out into the more rural areas, it's just gorgeous.
Did you ever watch the show Twin Peaks from the 90s?
A little bit. I wasn't rabidly involved with it, but I did watch it a little bit.
That show is good, as far as I'm concerned, captures the rural Northwest pretty well in the imagery and some of the characters.
Well, actually another one that captures it really well is Northern Exposure, which was filmed about 100 miles east of Seattle. It was set in Alaska, but that's not where they filmed it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I knew it was set in Alaska, but I did not know it was filmed outside Seattle.
What about Twilight? Isn't Twilight filmed there somewhere?
Probably Vancouver.
Yeah, Twilight. Actually, the author who wrote the Twilight books had never. I think she lived in Utah. I can't remember exactly where she lived, but she'd never been up in that area, and she was just looking for the cloudiest place in the United States, and it's Forks, Washington, which is 120 miles west of Seattle.
Okay.
That's right close, over on the edge of the peninsula on the Pacific coast. A good friend of mine grew up there, Justin Rondow, who's also a falconer. He's a little too busy with it. Yeah, he's a little bit too busy with his family life and his business to be very much involved in social media and other things. But he had the good fortune to be a budding young man when Twilight hysteria went off, and he told me once years ago that he and a good friend of his would go hang out where all the fangirls for the Twilight stories would show up in. He grew up in Forks, the town that Twilight was set in, and when the pilgrimage of young girls would show up, he would make himself available for their attention. And had a lot of fun with that.
I would imagine, but it all depends if they're Team Edward or Team. What's the guy's name?
Yeah, he had a good friend who was. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Casey. He would go. He was there to provide services, shall we say, to the team. I don't know the stories well enough to know which is which, but he played the vampire.
Yeah,
and
Edward,
one of his friends, who was a Quileute Indian, satisfied those who were interested in the werewolf end of things. So they covered both bases between the two of them.
That's some good wingmen, right? That's a good wingman team right there.
That's right.
And all right, so that's enough Twilight talk for us. Let's discuss something.
I have a Goshawk tie into Twilight because long before Twilight was a thing, I was spending time in the town of Forks looking for goshawks out in the rainforest out there.
Well, that's a great tie into what I was getting ready to bring up are the Olympic goshawks.
Yes, is that where they're from? Correct?
Yeah. So, well, go ahead, Aaron.
No, my understanding is the Olympic goshawks are smaller and darker than the other localities in America.
Yeah, that is true. They are the smallest and the darkest goshawks in North America, that subspecies that's out there. Now, I'm not a degreed scientist, but I have a strong penchant for biology and science, and the scientist side of me wants to jump off and say there's a lot of argument about what actually constitutes one of the goshawks of that subspecies. There's a large group of islands off the coast of Vancouver, or off the coast of British Columbia, they used to be called the Queen Charlotte Islands. The current name for them is the Haida Gwaii Islands, which is the old Aboriginal Indian name for them. Some biologists say that the the langai, which is the scientific name for those goshawks, only live on Queen Charlotte Islands. Some biologists will argue they live in all of the coastal wet forest from Central California all the way up into Alaska. And these otherwise intelligent biologists are beating the shit out of each other and clawing each other's eyeballs out, arguing their points on this. I have seen some of the goshawks out there on the Olympic Peninsula that are some of the ones I've seen out there look like crows with an eye stripe on them, just
really
black as can be. Their ventral surfaces, their chest is a charcoal gray, and their back is a much darker gray. But some of the ones I've seen have just been sooty black.
Ooh,
and
gorgeous.
Yeah, gorgeous. I never actually succeeded in finding an active nest out there on the peninsula. That's really thick country to go hiking through. But I put the college try in and spent a lot of time wearing boot leather out looking for them.
I want to say that that's how I became aware of you. Probably, I don't know, Facebook 10 years ago,
or NAFX. More likely?
No, I never was involved with NAFX. I was around during that time period, but I was never on those forums. I wasn't the best at the computer, so I didn't know how to do any of that stuff.
Instagram too. I was real active on Instagram.
Yeah, I just remember seeing you and your ponytail, and you were climbing some of those giant, those big giant trees. And I think your post said something about something interesting about goshawks. And I was like, well, this guy seems like legit. I mean, he's got the ponytail. He's like climbing up that giant tree.
Yeah, that tree that you're talking about, we didn't measure the diameter, but I had to have somebody walk the flip rope around it because I couldn't toss it around.
Yeah, it was like a huge tree. I remember the pictures and stuff. And I was like, wow, this looks amazing. It looks so cool.
Yeah.
That's when I first became aware of you, I think.
That tree... that nest location actually wasn't out on the Olympic Peninsula. It was a bit further inland from there. And part of that area where some biologists would say, no, those don't count as black goshawks. But the bird I pulled out of there was sure pretty dark. And everybody that looked at her called her a black goshawk.
So now the darkest birds, because I always thought that the Apache was the darkest one. But is that a mistake?
I don't know. I've never actually seen one. Barry Olette sent me a bird to use as a breed. Barry Olette's a goshawk breeder in Michigan. He sent me a bird that he produced from an Apache female that was half Apache and half more mainstream North American goshawk. And that bird wasn't particularly dark.
Okay.
I got that bird as an adult breeder.
And it wasn't very dark.
No, it wasn't very dark, but I haven't ever seen the Apaches. I've heard that they're dark. I've also heard that the Apaches are really big.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
But I haven't seen one.
So now the Apaches you cannot pull, if I'm not mistaken. You cannot pull those for falconry.
I forget which state. I think so. The range of the Apache subspecies covers eastern Arizona, western New Mexico, and the bits of Mexico proper that are just south of there. And I can't remember, one of those states prohibits take in the range that they define as Apache. But you can go right next to the line of where you can't take them, and those birds are still, the genes don't know where the line on the map is, and they'll float back and forth a little bit. So you can get close to where the Apaches are in, I think it's Arizona that doesn't allow take in their range.
Got it. Yeah, you're going to make some biologists mad with that statement that they don't know where the line is.
Right. Well, those are the same biologists that are getting mad about me saying I flew a black goshawk that came from about 300 miles away from the Queen Charlotte, or 400 miles away from the Queen Charlotte Islands, and was not from the Olympic Peninsula. But
right, exactly. They don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So, is there any other characteristics about those birds that would be different? Behavioral, anything like that you notice? Just the coloration, maybe, and the size.
Yeah, the size is a real big difference. I was standing at the tree when Steve Lehman and his son Seth pulled two birds out of one there was 3 birds in the nest. I was number 3 on the take if there was 4 chicks in the nest, but so I saw those birds get taken. Those were way out there in the Olympic Peninsula in a real lush, wet rainforest that got 120 inches of rain average per year. That's 10 feet of rain per year.
Wow.
Real beautiful country. But that goshawk that Steve took from there was a tiercel, and I went over and visited him once when it was still a brown bird. It was sitting on a pole perch with a hood on, and I was teasing him that Seth had messed up and climbed in a Cooper's hawk nest because it looked like a Cooper's hawk with a hood on.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And in terms of the characteristics that I've noticed with them, Steve Lehman calls them the slowest goshawks, and what he means by that is they have a really slow top end speed compared to other goshawks, and that's been my observation as well. I had jumped in on a conversation with Dave Canellis when he was kind of wondering about how fast they were, and I might have shot all his interest in them down when I told him, no, they're not fast. They're way slower than other goshawks. But
they're probably fast enough, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they're fast enough. But what that lack of speed gives them is much better maneuverability. That bird that I had that came out of that tree that you were talking about, Casey, when she was about 5 years old, I was in Nevada hunting with Lou Soder. It was actually the first time we'd met. And we were comparing his female albitus to my female black goshawk side by side. And his jaw kept dropping. He said, I had no idea that goshawks could be that maneuverable, because like she would pitch up and hover. One of the flights that we had that day that Lou was really impressed by was, and I was impressed by it too, but I saw him a lot more often than he did. I didn't see what she was chasing, but she flew into this patch of sagebrush that was about 4.5 feet tall and 100% closed canopy, really, really thick. And you guys being from the East Coast may not be familiar with what a chunk of sage like that might look like, but it's like a 4-foot tall forest with trunks that are about 18 inches apart at the ground level where they're growing up. And she dropped underneath that canopy and popped up about 3 to 4 seconds later, 300 yards away on the other side of it.
Jeez. Wow.
And roughly calculating that speed, that's probably 45, 50 miles an hour that she was flying through that cover that I couldn't walk through.
Yeah. That's just my experience with tiercels. But a female doing that, I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah. And, in contrast, that same day when I was out with Lou, his bird just blew me away at how fast she was. And at one point during that day, I turned to him and I said, man, I've been flying goshawks for over 20 years. I didn't know they could be that quick because I'd never seen it. All the birds that I've flown have been these rainforest goshawks that are adapted with, like Steve says, a slower top end speed, but much more maneuverability.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was the bird he was flying? Some sort of an albitus?
It was hybrid? An albitus female that Mark, I can't remember if he bred it or he got it from Mark Mogalich. Him and Mark trade birds a lot, but it was, sorry, I left that out. It was a pure albitus female.
Oh yeah. The albitus is it might as well be like half gyrfalcon, those things. They love an open, just haul ass chase that they love that. It's almost not even like from the glove with those things and you're in tight cover. Like they just, when something makes a break for it, it's like, that's when they get excited because they can just rip, just pull in it and just, it's like, it's hard to tell, like, you know what I mean? But like when you're flying them, it's like almost like they're waiting for that. They don't do the stuff the North Americans do where they're real hovery and they want to dart and weave. Like the albitus is it's basically like a red tail and a gyrfalcon and a goshawk, like bred to. It's like, that's my experience.
Yeah. I haven't had a whole lot of experience with pure albitus. I'm hoping to fix that this upcoming season and finally get a hold of one and fly one. But I've been out with Lou. Who else have I been out with? I guess I've been out with a few people who have had them, and that's kind of my impression too.
Yeah.
I don't think they're as good if you're in. There's this thing that a lot of people like to ask, or like to say, like, what's the best goshawk, or the best any other species of bird for that matter, and the answer to that always comes down to it depends. Like, where I was at flying in, when I lived in Seattle, I had a lot of places I could hunt that were wide open, but most of the places I really liked to hunt were really dense, thick cover, and an albitus just wouldn't have done nearly as well there as the birds that were born and bred for that habitat type.
Yeah. Yeah. The catch to slip ratio in tight cover, the North American of any locality in tight cover is going to blow every other goshawk subspecies away.
Yeah. Yeah. And the definition of what's tight cover is going to change a lot too.
I guess where you live. I mean, Aaron deals with tight cover down there in North Carolina, real dense. It's basically tropical down there, and Jersey's very dense. A lot of the areas we get open slips here and there, but it's pretty tight on average.
I've only been to New York once. I had a business trip that I had to take to the White Plains Tarrytown area, and the terrain there looked real similar to what I had at home in Seattle.
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes from me. White Plains,
but not quite as thick. My cover was thicker in the Seattle area, but real similar.
This is your primary focus. In the past, you have shared with us that you have flown Harris hawks, red tails, but your primary focus is goshawks.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned earlier that you're going to hopefully get a albitus this season.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Specifically, what are you hoping to get?
So I have a tiercel, half North American, half albitus goshawk that I bought from my friend Justin that I was just talking about. And at the time, he was partners with another really good friend of mine, Aaron Smith, and they had produced this goshawk that I had largely bought on a whim. That was, like I said, a tiercel, and I raised him as a full imprint. And about 4 weeks into flying him during his first season, I realized I had something special there. And another 4 weeks into his first season, I decided I was going to put him up for breeding because he was so excellent. Until he could get some of his genes into the next generation. And the reason why I'm interested in an albitus is I want a full-blooded female albitus to use as a girlfriend for him in my breeding program.
Okay. Who are you looking to get it from?
That's the core motivation. Well, I futzed around a little bit with trying to get in touch with Mogalich and get on his list. And by the time I finally got a hold of him, he told me his list was full. But Lou put me on his list if he's able to produce anything. I probably should branch out and see if I can get on some other people's lists, but that's as far as I've gotten so far.
It kills me to have to decline if somebody calls you up and says they've got a bird for you.
Don't decline on my account, Aaron.
So when you want to cover all your bases and ensure you get a bird, you get on too many lists, and it's before you know it, you might have 2 or 3 people hitting you up saying they got your bird for you.
No, that's a good problem to have, man.
Well, just say you want a tiercel albitus, and then no one will call you for 4 years. Because literally nobody will call you, because I've been trying to get one for 4 years and I can't get my greedy paws on one.
This is your year, Casey.
I hope so. I got some irons in the fire. I'm with Mogalich, Seth Roy, and Lou says that he might make one. Is he making pure? Is Lou making pure albitus?
Lou's gonna try.
Okay.
It's been a while since I asked him how many he's got. I know he has one pair of pure albitus that he has not produced anything from yet. It's relatively new to him. And I don't know what else he's got. I think he still has at least one other female and another tiercel other than that one pair.
What's that tiercel's name? That duck slaying machine that he always posts?
I don't know.
It has a cool name.
Ammo and what was the other one's name? Ammo is one of the tiercels he had.
And like Hatchet or something, or like Takana. It's like a cool name.
It's another weapon name. He's been stuck on naming his birds after weapons for a while. I can't remember what it is.
That's really cool, actually.
Yeah, it's super cool. And he always refers to his birds as the arrows in his quiver. I love that. I freaking love that. Dude, but it's cool though, dude, because that's what they are.
Oh,
You're freaking weapons, man. It's so awesome. Yeah, I like Lou. I really like what he's doing. But yeah, I'm trying to get an albitus. So if anybody listening to this,
if you got albitus falling out your ass, hit up Casey.
Yeah, hit up Casey. But yeah.
No, but he doesn't want to pay a lot of money, so keep that in mind.
I read my mind. I'm not trying to pay 5 G's though, but I'll spend some money, but I'm not trying to spend 5,000. So.
I'm tired of spending money on birds. I really am.
Me too, man.
The first albitus I ever saw in person was a guy at a meetup in Oregon who can't remember if he had imported it, but and I wish I could remember the exact dollar amount he paid for it. But all of us at the meet that were hanging around talking to this guy were teasing him about how much cocaine he could have bought for that amount of money. And what a waste it was that he spent it on a bird. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I have an addictive personality, so I was told by many people to stay away from that.
That's probably a good idea, man.
Yeah. Okay, so tiercel, a female albitus for your breeding program. How long have you been breeding for? I mean, I want to know a bunch of stuff. I want to know how you got into falconry. I want to know everything, but
I can only answer one question at a time, but I'm happy to get to them all eventually.
That's Casey's thing. He goes, I want to know everything. I have so many questions to ask.
Yeah, and it becomes a schizophrenic freak show. So that's why Aaron is in charge of the questions, because otherwise it becomes a mess.
Right. So let's talk about your unique way of raising imprint Goshawks.
Okay. So I took my first goshawk in 98. This was also a goshawk that was kind of on the bleeding line between where the black goshawks and the main North American goshawks come in contact with each other. And I don't know if she was a black goshawk. I would call her one. A lot of people who saw her thought she was really dark, but the way I raised my very first one was I followed Mike McDermott's recipe almost to a T. The only thing I changed in it was several of the people in my orbit who were my goshawk mentors were talking about how you could, in Mike's program, feeding on the glove was at that time at least was absolutely forbidden. He's kind of backed off from that hard line since then, but he at that time was saying if you feed goshawks on the glove, you're going to have a face-grabbing monster in terms of imprints. And these other friends of mine had pointed out that if you're just real careful how you're feeding on the glove, you can make it work. So with my very first one, what I did was I turned my glove into the plucking post. My bird would go catch game or go catch the lure, and then I would trade off to the glove, and that's where they would eat. But all the aggression was focused on game or the glove. After I had raised that one, I realized during that time that you're raising a bird, there's a lot of potential time to teach them stuff. And I was already fairly well versed in operant conditioning when I raised my first goshawk, but I had started to get better at it by the time I raised my second. And the base outline of the program that I came up with is from the day I get my hands on that bird, I'm feeding tidbits from my fingers, and I'm given the conditioned reinforcer. It's part of operant conditioning terminology. I guess we can dive into that a little bit to flesh that out if you want. But like I will give a signal and I will give the tidbit, and eventually the bird learns that signal means I did something good. And then that's like 2 or 3 days that it takes me to establish the link between feeding the tidbit and this whistle or any other signal you want to use for the condition reinforcer. By about day 2, I'm starting to play shaping games that are plotted out towards what I want in the field. But like I have goshawks that can barely walk that will stumble 10, 20 yards across the room to go foot the lure when they can barely stand. And that translates when I'm flying them down the road to, I've got, unless I screw it up later on, which I occasionally do because I'm stupid like everybody else, but I've got incredible lure response. Some of my goshawks that I've had will come instantly from half a mile to the lure, and it's all built up on that initial shaping. And I will also incorporate some other things. Like when I lived when I was hunting in urban areas in Seattle, I was really concerned about all the chain link fences that were around. So as soon as my bird is to the point where it can fly, but not fly really well, I will set it up so that it's sitting like in an elevated position on one side of a chain link fence and the lure's on the other side of the chain link fence, and it'll fly into it and bounce off the chain link fence before it has enough power to cause any injury. And I just make it figure out it can't go through the fence, it has to go around it as kind of a safety mechanism.
How does that look when you're teaching it to do that? Obviously it's bouncing off, but what?
Oh, it looks funny as shit.
But I mean, as far as when it finally figures out, I need to go over the fence or around it if you're near the end of it.
Well, okay. So when I'm first setting those up, the bird's not flying enough that it can go over. So I'll do it on by a gate or by the end of a chain link fence. And sometimes it takes 20 minutes before the bird figures out that it can walk around the end. And I can kind of tease that a little bit by moving the lure over towards where the edge of the fence is until it sees that, oh, there's no chain link fence right there. Maybe I can run that way.
Mm. Yeah, the first person I heard that gave me that advice was Connor Buchello. Yeah.
And I'm assuming he didn't create that.
No, because it's all, so this is like that Western world that we're diving into. The Steve Lehman, this is like all this very thoughtful stuff that we're getting into.
I don't think I've ever told anybody about it until just now.
Oh, he does that. Yeah, he'll stand there with the bird on the glove, and he'll have a carcass on the other side of the fence and stand real close so the bird can't hurt itself, and just let it smack itself into the fence until it flies up and over or runs around or whatever, just to eliminate that, just to instill that understanding that this is not something you can fly through. I mean, it's also common sense, I guess, if you thought about it. I mean, if you ever had a bird smash a fence and kill itself after countless hours of entering and manning and raising and whatever, I think a couple days or a few sessions of doing that, just in the hopes that it'll stop that from happening ever again in the future. I mean, it's a conclusion that you could come to.
Well, that idea came to me because there was a falconer in Washington that I've lost touch with, but I used to be in regular contact with, who had a goshawk fly into a fence and kill itself. And I went, I don't want that to happen to my bird. How can I plan around that? And, it still doesn't take all the fear of flying around a chain link fence, but it alleviates a lot of it.
So you think it does help?
Oh, yeah. 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 That very first goshawk that I raised was the first time that I used that, teach him that a chain link fence is solid. And there was a flight I had, I don't know, 3 or 4 months into her first season, where a rabbit was running across an open field and she was chasing it at full speed, and it ducked under a chain link fence and then went running along the chain link fence on the other side. And she just, in goshawk maneuverability style, flipped her wings and hopped over the fence in the air and continued the chase on the other side and caught it. And then I had to figure out how the hell to get over the fence, which was kind of a problem, but I managed.
Did you notice that portion in the Bear Grease video of my red tail grabbing a squirrel through a fence?
I did.
So it grabbed a squirrel, and her feet were through the fence, and the squirrel was on the other side of the fence. I hopped over. The squirrel got free.
And she let go just as you got there.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say she let go as much as the squirrel wiggled free somehow.
Okay.
And it like bounced off my chest, which didn't really get caught by the camera, onto a tree. And then
why the hell didn't you grab it, man?
It was crazy. I would have. Casey will tell you, I would have grabbed it if I could.
Aaron's scared. He's scared of little rodents that bite. He never shoves his hands in holes in trees and pulls squirrels out or rats. He's real squeamish with that stuff. Everybody knows that about Aaron. No, he's got some disconnect in his brain. He shoves his hand. I watched him literally like 3 weeks ago, like shove his hand up a hole and pull out a black squirrel with his bare hand. It's very bizarre. I won't do that.
Well, you had a video you posted not long ago, Casey, of you grabbing a rabbit by hand.
Well, rabbits they're not going to spin around and put a hole in your fucking finger.
Yeah, he wouldn't do that if they would bite you. He would not.
Oh, if they bit, I would just scream like a girl and be like, ah! No. With rabbits, I catch rabbits by hand on a fairly regular basis. And the one that we caught in North Carolina was with Daryl Perkins standing right behind me, and that thing ran out of the brush pile. I moved my foot just out of like instinct.
Like, damn, that's crazy as hell.
Yeah. Daryl, I think, listen, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Daryl's was flowing with a bunch of people. I think Daryl had a really good time with us. I'm just going to say that.
Oh, I know he had a good time with us.
I don't know how he actually feels, but I think we had a good time because we had a lot of fun with Daryl.
Before we get too off track, the reason I brought that up was to someone that doesn't fly birds, they may think, why didn't the red tail just fly over the fence and go fly the squirrel down?
Yeah, well, number one, because a red tail's not that maneuverable. And number two, like my dad laughs about this all the time, that birds are too stupid to realize they can fly over something. But like fences aren't part of their genetic background. They don't really understand the idea of just going up and over something that they can see through like that. Just doesn't occur to them.
Yeah, we use that to our advantage every year in October, trapping birds.
Right. That's how they end up in mist nets or or BCs or.
Exactly. But it is scary when the bird can get to top speed in about 0.6 of a second and break its neck. So so you were doing that stuff. So when did you meet Steve Lehman? Because you were doing that type of exercises with your first goshawk ever?
I met Steve the year before I got my first goshawk.
Okay, that explains a lot. Because
I'd been out hunting with him and his son Seth, and it was actually another guy who's no longer a friend, but at the time I was friendly with another guy who was a mutual friend.
What's his name? Maybe we were both not friends with him anymore. Yeah, you don't have to say. I'm not gonna put you on the spot.
We'll bleep it out.
I'm happy to mention his name, just not in the podcast, not in the recording. But
you got it. You know,
he and that friend used to be really tight with me, but now he thinks I'm either the absolute antichrist or just the antichrist of falconry, which I think is a little odd because he was nearly drowning in a slough once, and I pulled him out. You'd think he'd be grateful that I saved him from drowning, but
should have left him in there.
Every once in a while when he gets really uppity at me, I'm tempted to go put him back in the slough I drug him out of. I don't know if that would be legal, but I'm still tempted to do it.
It's crazy. I mean, falconry, it's a passionate thing, man. Listen, man, we get fired up. And listen, this is a goshawk episode. It's not 100% a goshawk episode. Okay. We're going to talk about Harris Hawks later. So everybody just relax. But the goshawk people, I think, and this is not just, patting us, ourselves on the back because we're in like an echo chamber here, but I think we have an extra level of,
insanity,
craziness, where we're just like, we take it. Cause it's like, why would you deal with a goshawk? Like, why? Because you're obsessed with this craft, with this problem, with solving this thing, with just diving into this rabbit hole, with talking to Steve Lehman for 4 hours while your wife is screaming at you out the back door as you, put one finger in your other ear and walk further away from the house. Say, what was that, Steve? Say that again. Wait, say that again. You know what I mean? It's like you get down this, it just takes control of you. So maybe we're on another level that way because we get real passionate.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
There's so many negative forces in falconry, though.
Well,
just that
I've
little
had a lot
harmless
of
video I posted, or that Bear posted, got negativity. I'm like, there's
barely, Aaron. Come on, nobody's threatening your life. Come on,
that's my point. That's my point, though. Is what could you even find in that to be negative about? It just is what it is. It's a little soft, light, fluffy. This is kind of what falconry is, and here's some trapping.
So I've ruminated on that a lot with a lot of different people. And I think it really comes down to a real basic element. In order to do falconry in the modern world, you have to be with very few exceptions, you have to be at least a little bit eccentric. And I think those exceptions are like people whose parents were falconers and grew up in it. Maybe they don't have to be eccentric to get involved in it, but there's so many legal hurdles. It's so hard to carve out the time in your life to go do it. And the one thing that's really funny about eccentric people is they can't stand other eccentric people. They just lock horns with them. And I think that's what's at the root of a lot of that. Like that conversation you guys had with Keith Gardner, where a whole lot of people were claiming you were treating him badly. I think those are just eccentric people that were thinking that were upset at how you talked to him and found little vices.
I would agree. I didn't. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, we went over it ad nauseum, but yeah, like Heath had a good time. We had a good time when I was yelling and screaming, which I wasn't actually yelling and screaming. I'm just a crazy person. Like he was laughing and like slapping his leg, and it wasn't like it wasn't tense at all. It was just like a fun conversation, and people are just like they lost their minds over that conversation, and they still bring it up to this day. They hate us over it. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you can't control what people think of you. You just gotta shrug your shoulders and let it roll off like water off a duck's back.
Correct.
Minimizing the contributions we're making here too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, minimizing the record increase. Well, probably since Project Falcon, but in the modern era, the record increase in membership since that series of episodes dropped into NAFA's membership. I mean, but no, thank you from those people. Nothing. Just a continuation of the hate and dislike, from those particular people and their cohorts. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But whatever.
But before we get off it, I want to focus on another element of that question you asked, Aaron, about my unique method of raising.
Yes.
Steve Lehman actually came up with a kind of similar method, but he and I developed our methods independently. There's a lot of people that have seen Steve talk about his method and have heard some of the details of it. But one real important element that I wanted to add in, Steve talks about when he first came up with the idea of direct food association with an imprint accipiter, he was calling it grabbing the tiger by the tail. And I think that's a really good metaphor to keep in your head, because you can really, you can get in a situation where you've got some real serious aggression problems. And what's really important doing direct food association, what's really important having success with that is to be really careful that you are paying attention to the way that baby accipiter is acting. And, when they're a cute little baby, they're not strong enough to hurt you. They don't have an ounce of mean in their body anyway. They won't even try. But when they get about halfway to hard penning, that's when the bitchy comes out. And the core personality setting for a goshawk or a Cooper's hawk or a Sharpie is to be a bully. And you can get into a scenario, if you're not careful, where they will start thinking they can bully you out of the food and they know you've got it. And the key is to just usually wait that out. One of the birds that I raised using that method, the descriptor I want to use is she got a little spicy. I had to be real careful if I had food in my bare hand around her, because she was really inclined to reach out and grab it. And I saw her when she was young, I saw these behavioral elements where she was acting really antsy for the food. her hackles had come up and she'd start screaming at me that she wanted it. And my response to that with her was to just wait it out, wait till she calmed down. And and I got into some trouble with her because she never actually did calm down. She would just get angrier and angrier as things went on. And after a few days of the scenario getting worse, where at feeding time when I'm playing a shaping game, she's just getting really bitchy towards me because she wants me to feed her. I realized what I really needed to do was slip her a little bit of food so she had an elevated blood sugar and she wasn't getting hungry a few minutes before we had a training session. And then she had the patience to work through it. And that first season that I was working with her, I had to be a little careful because she'd reach out and foot me on occasion just because I had made that mistake for a few days of letting her get antsy and picking the wrong way to resolve that. Steve's had a lot more consistent success both with himself and how he's raised birds and with the people that he's coached. Part of my problem is I have kids. My kids are all adults now, but I got a busy life. I got other stuff going on, and I don't really carve out enough time and let myself get into a pickle of, well, I've only got 15 minutes to feed you. You got to calm down in that 15 minutes. And I also kind of suffer from another problem in my own personal falconry with, because I understand that with operant conditioning, I can spackle over any problems. I can just fix it later. Sometimes I lean on that more than I should. It's easier to fix a problem that isn't there than to fix the problem that is there. But sometimes I get a little cocky and just think, it's all right if I get a little of aggression, I'll just work it out later.
I mean, but it is true. It is true, though.
I wanted to ask something as far as waiting it out goes. When you mentioned that, are you saying in that moment in time, or are you saying that's a period that will pass?
No, in that moment in time. Like, right. For example, if I have a training session where I am working on this bird going to the lure, or I'm teaching her something else that I'm going to use later on field wise, like going to the giant hood is a good one to teach, although I never bother doing it. I'm just talking about in that training session. If I see aggressive behavior show up, my initial response is to wait it out. The better response, and this is what it looks like
what
is
you're doing.
Yeah, well, no, not stopping what I'm doing, but for example, I'm having my bird go over to the lure and put the lure, and then I'll feed her when she gets on the lure. And she gets on the lure, and she grabs it, and she's giving me the stink eye over her shoulder. That's a real aggressive behavior.
We know that look well.
Yeah. So if I feed her when she's giving me that stink eye, that's encouraging some hot emotions. That's going to lead to perhaps aggression where she'll come off the lure and attack you. It's reinforcing all of that. And what I mean by waiting it out is if she's on the lure and she's looking over her shoulder and she's giving me the stink eye, I'll just let her give me the stink eye for a few minutes until she gets bored of giving me the stink eye, and then I'll go in and reward her when she calms down and she's showing some calm behaviors. An even better approach that I have actually used sometimes is to come up with a sneaky way to have a tidbit appear, like not between the lure and me, but on the other side of her, like toss it over her head or something when she's not looking. And then she can go over and eat that, and she's a little bit sated. Her blood sugar will come up a little bit very quickly when she eats that tidbit. Then I can do another one like that. And eventually, when she's calm, then I'll do what I really wanted to do, which is have her step up on my glove while she's calm and eat food off the glove. But, throughout all that, I'm careful that I'm not rewarding her for giving me, I'm not giving her the reward when she's angry and giving me the stink eye. I'm waiting until she's calm.
It's good.
What do you do when the bird is coming at your feet early on as Phil and Paul call it doing the Dracula walk to you. So is it, would you advise
stupid Dracula walk?
Dude,
it's so funny.
It's the most spot on description. They puff out like a cave.
So this is reminding me of an anecdote of a conversation I had with laymen. There are other laymen who are falconers, but just for the extent of this conversation, plug in Steve whenever I say layman.
Yes.
I had a conversation. I'm really good friends with his son, and I've met his granddaughter, who's also a falconer. But and Steve's son is Steve has one son who's a falconer. But anyway, I had a conversation with him ages ago, and he said aggression's a positive thing. And I kind of pulled the phone away, and I looked at it, and I think I said, Steve, you're fucking nuts. And he said, no, really. And that's actually something he's used to hearing. All of his friends at some point or another have said, Steve, you're fucking nuts to some of his ideas. But, and then he elaborated and he said, no, an aggressive bird wants something out of you, and I can use that to my advantage. So Aaron, your question about what do I do with a bird that's wants to lunge at my feet and do the Dracula walk. My first thought is, Steve, you're nuts, because this aggression is not going to be fun. But I mean, it's situationally dependent. But what that is showing you is this bird wants something out of you, and all I have to do to channel that in a way I want is give it a more positive way to express that. And also, try not to reward it. When it's sitting on my feet, I'm not going to throw food on the ground, and I'm not going to throw food at it. I'm going to get my foot away from it as gently as I can. And just try to find a situation before it gets into that scenario, so that it can learn that if I do this, I get what I want.
What I hate is when they switch into something negative before you can ever respond. Like they just, boom, they get to Dracula walking around your feet before you have a chance to do what you wanted to do. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and this is why, like during the summertime, if I'm wearing an IS Falcon or an IS Goshawk, I don't go anywhere near it if I have sandals on or any other kind of lightweight shoes, unless it's well fed. Because they don't do that if they've got a full crop and they're relaxed. They do that if they think it's feeding time and they're anxious because feeding time hasn't come yet.
Right. Yeah. And you look like, with the ponytail, you strike me as a kind of guy that wears some, as we call in the East, we call them Jerusalems. Those nice leather sandals, the real comfy ones that mold to your feet. You don't wear those.
I imagine you wearing like a necklace with a crystal on it, and
I just look like a hippie. I'm not. I'm definitely not.
Yeah. Listen, I'm just jealous I can't grow a ponytail, or I could probably just grow like the back end of it.
Yeah, it could be like the comic book store owner or the professor.
Yeah, just completely bald and then just like a ponytail coming out the back. The only way it'd be cool is if I grew it out and then I folded it up like a samurai, and then I was just bald and then I had it folded up like above me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
with a leather strap with like a little chopstick through it.
Those samurais are badass guys, man. I would never make fun of their haircut.
Oh, we are not making fun of them, because I have been actively for the last year been trying to get in contact with some sort of a falconer from Japan that speaks English. Because that's we've been trying for a while. And we did that merch collab with a Japanese samurai falconer with the katana. That was a really nice piece of art we did. So I've been trying, and I got a guy that was awesome. And he said, my English is not so good. And I said, oh, shoot. All right. I said, do you know anybody else? And he's like, I do not know what you're asking. And I said, okay, never mind. So we've been trying.
So if anybody out there knows a Japanese falconer or somebody who's well-versed in Japanese falconry, hit us up.
Yes, please. And I will not do my accent impression with them on the show, obviously.
Because that would bring Casey's family great dishonor.
It will be very great dishonor.
The Hawking
right.
of Japan, which is a book written by, I can't remember who, Jameson was the author, published quite a while ago, primarily focusing on Goshawks. I drew a lot of inspiration off that. I love Japanese falconry.
Oh yeah, it's like one of the cool. I think like out of all the ancient, like I don't, you know what I mean. I don't want to care. I don't want to hear about these kings and queens with their falcons. I want to hear about the Japanese samurai with their goshawks. That's what I want to hear about.
When I was still up in Seattle, I used to tease my apprentices on a regular basis that I was going to do legit Japanese falconry by sitting in the back of a canoe with a goshawk on my glove, and my apprentice would be in the bow poling the canoe along. And then when my goshawk caught a duck, their job would be to jump in the water and swim out there and get the duck and the goshawk and bring them back to me.
That's just standard apprentice.
Yeah.
That's the responsibility, obviously.
Yeah.
Of course.
Never found one that was willing to go along with it.
Well, then you don't have an apprentice then. That's fine. That's awesome.
What's your take on hacking goshawks, Geoff?
I understand why people like it, because when you're first entering your bird, there's a lot of stupidity going on before your bird can learn to fly, and if you hack them out, that all gets worked out before you're like, I've had birds I raised that I did not hack, that I spent the first 3 weeks of the hunting season just pulling my hair out about how could you be so stupid, because they do something like try to land on a pine cone instead of taking a perch where they could see what's going on.
Yeah.
Or not figure out how to land on something very basic next to them. And it's kind of cute and adorable if you're not a bloodthirsty game hawker who wants to catch something, but it drives me nuts. And on that end of it, I love it. I love how it affects the fitness early on, but I know I am not going to hack in the foreseeable future because I'm worried about predation events where I currently live. My east property line is BLM, and there's millions of acres of BLM land out there. So I've got an ideal spot room-wise, but I see golden eagles over my driveway on about a weekly basis during the summer. I had a female half albitus, half North American goshawk that Lou Soder bred, killed by a red tail when I was hunting over in that BLM land. Just about 100 yards from my fence line is where that kill happened. So personally, I'm more worried about the predation aspect of it. I might do some form of tame hacking where I just let the bird go out and play and I'm supervising. But in terms of just letting them go and be a goshawk and the old traditional turn them loose type of hacking, man, I'm too nervous about predators where I'm at right now. I kind of did that with the last, well, it wasn't the last one. I kind of did that with it was the last goshawk I took from the wild. I kind of did that. I lived in a forested neighborhood, and I would let my bird go in my backyard, and then I would come feed her progressively later. It started off, I would feed her 10 minutes later and, call her down to the lure. At that stage, she had only hopped up on the railing of my deck, but it got to the point where she was spending 2 hours just out hanging out in the trees before I called her in. And that's still not a real traditional hack, but it's a little bit more of one.
Yeah, I guess that was like kind of an interesting question to ask you, who's well versed on this, because when I hear hack, I don't think like traditional hack where it's out there and then you basically like retrap it or recapture it. The hack that like I'm familiar with and like Aaron's probably referring to with this question is like basically a tame hack where you cut them loose in the morning and then you find them in the afternoon and set up some sort of a carcass drag, baggie, or a lure to get them back, and then they sleep safely at night in a mew or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of variations on that term hack that people are doing now. And I see a lot of value in it. I really do. But it's got its downsides. Didn't you have an unfortunate incident not too long ago, Aaron, at a hack scenario?
I did. I had Casey thinks possibly an eagle based on how much was eaten off of her. But when I was retrieving her dead body, there was a red tail territory screaming while I was there.
Man, that sucks.
Yeah.
Everybody that I know personally, they were shocked that a red tail would mess with her. She was a big Russian Butyoides, Ural Mountain Butyoides.
Who bred her?
Moglich.
Oh, okay.
And man, the development I saw, that was the first time I'd ever hacked a bird. Of course, with me and that my stretch of luck over that course of like 6 months, I had my chamber raised bird from Lance Christensen had a collision in the field and died. I had my red tail hit a fence and died. And then the next bird I get was that baby, the goshawk I raised and hacked, and she was eaten by a red tail. But everybody I personally know said that they couldn't believe that a red tail messed with her.
I couldn't believe it either. It was, what was it, like August or something? Like it was like,
yeah, it was.
Why is a red tail killing and eating a giant, like, what'd she weigh at that point? Like 1,300 something? Like,
yeah,
why
she was fat, 1,400 gram.
Well, I've been either blessed or cursed, I guess, with stories from people I've known who have lost goshawks to red tails from before I even had my first goshawk, and that had always been in the back of my mind. It doesn't surprise me that especially if you think of how naive that bird of yours was during the hack.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks. Don't get me wrong. I feel for you, Aaron. I think that was awful, but
yeah.
I mean, it's just it is what it is. I really want people to know that so they can add that to the list of things that could happen during a hack. Most people are concerned about great horned owls, or if you live out west, golden eagles, but you got to worry about red tails too, apparently.
Yeah, well, great horned owls are a concern of mine where I currently live too. I hear them all the time and very often see them in my yard, but
there seems to be a lot more of them out west. And you wouldn't really have any way to compare that because you've never lived on the East Coast, but I've seen on the East Coast 2 or 3 great horned owls, period, flat out. I went to South Texas and I saw probably 50 a night.
It's crazy.
Well, out west, from your point of view, covers a lot of the country. But yeah, there's a lot of great horned owls where I'm at, and they're dangerous. But one thing that was really nice when I lived in the Seattle area, there's one of my apprentices was fond of quoting the Indian chief that Seattle was named after. This quote from old Chief Seattle was, "It takes a real stupid man to starve to death in this country." And he was referring to the abundance of deer, elk, and some seafood. You didn't need any skill as a hunter gatherer during the time that guy lived. You could just walk out on the beach and get enough to eat any day of the year. What I had noticed living up there is that's largely true of the great horned owls and the bald eagles and a lot of the other predators too. Like it was kind of a joke in that area. There, bald eagles were really, really common, but the joke was they can't be bothered to kill anything unless it's already dead.
Right.
Now, that being said, if your bird's down on a kill and a bald eagle decides it wants it and your bird's stupid enough to try and defend it, the bald eagle thinks that's just a bonus because it has twice as much to eat.
Right.
But all the encounters I had with great horned owls when I lived in Seattle, and I had a few that scared the shit out of me, but those owls were just curious. They weren't interested in doing anything dangerous. Yeah. And in contrast, friend of mine, a guy I know that used to live in Spokane in the east part of Washington, where winter gets really hard and serious. He lost three birds to golden owl, or 3 birds killed on block perches to great horned owls. I think that was in one winter.
God.
People were kind of teasing him that he was running a great horned owl breeding project because he kept feeding his falcons to him. And another,
So was he leaving
another
them out
friend
at
of
night?
I don't know the circumstances. I just know that the joke was making the rounds of the Washington falconry community. And another friend of mine that also lived in Spokane, he was out hunting huns in the Palouse grasslands out there and was walking back to his truck and had a great horned owl try and take his falcon off his glove.
Jeez.
Repeatedly, made more than one pass.
Yeah, when I had a peregrine for like 5 seconds, I had a red tail try to literally snatch the bird off my glove during like the training process. It came down multiple times and sat in a tree and was like leaning and leaning and leaning. And I think there's something about falcons. I think maybe birds like that, like golden eagles, bald eagles, great horned owls, red tails. I think they're like in a routine of robbing falcons, maybe, because that bird wanted that falcon on my glove like so bad, where I had to shield it and walk back to my truck.
Well,
Birds also can't resist attacking owls either.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, those Harrishawks left that great horned owl alone in Ohio, though, which was surprising. Right, Aaron? That was, yep. I did not, I was like, oh, they're going to go grab this thing right now. I better get my phone out.
We were out with friend of the show, Rick Thompson, and his birds spooked up a great horned owl that didn't fly very far away, maybe 20, 30 yards away. And thank God the Harris Hawks didn't go after it. Could have resulted in a dead Harris Hawk.
I mean, a great horned owl is that's a dangerous, very formidable bird of prey.
Yeah, it is.
True badasses. So, Geoff, I wanted to ask you, flying a goshawk in where you currently live, which is in Nevada, correct?
Yeah.
It's very hot there, is my understanding.
Well, only during the summer.
So your winters are cold?
Well, okay, so Nevada has a diversity of climates with it. Las Vegas is really hot, and then in the winter, it's not so hot. I'm up in the Reno area, and I have hot summers and usually cold winters, but we somehow we missed out on winter this year. I'm not really bitching all that much about it, but yeah, we have normal snowy winters.
Interesting. What's like what like okay, wait. So like in the winter when you wake up in the morning, it's like 30 degrees.
Often 15 to 20.
Oh, wow. And then the afternoon?
In the winter, it's actually not unusual for it to never get above freezing in the winter during the afternoon.
Dude, I'm going to move there. I'm about to move there.
But a lot of days, yeah, well, it just depends.
He's backing off on it now. He's like, no, you're going to move here.
Actually, it's hot as hell all year round.
No. That's not why I'm backing off. I've only been here for 3 winters, so I don't have a full grasp of what normal is. But
gotcha. But so it feels semi-normal to you being in Nevada. So I think Aaron's question that he's alluding to is, how are you managing flying goshawks in such a arid, dry, hot climate?
Well, my glove doesn't get as wet as it used to when I was in a really wet climate like Seattle, so that's an immediate bonus. But it is kind of a trick to manage them in the summer so that they don't overheat. But the chambers that I have them in, I originally built them in Seattle to withstand the rain. They're chain link panels with privacy slatting in them, and I wasn't real sure how they would do in my current climate, but the privacy slatting provides shade and keeps things cool in there, so my hawks just move into the shade when they get overheated.
Okay. What about the mosquitoes?
Where I'm at, there really aren't any significant populations of mosquitoes because I'm up in the foothills.
You just mispronounced it, Geoff. It's mosquitoes, right?
All right. I'm sorry.
Mosquito.
I don't have much to worry about in terms of like mosquitoes transmitting West Nile. Where I'm at,
you're very lucky.
it is near me. Lou lives about 20 miles away from me in the bottom of a valley, and there's enough between agriculture and people's yards with little ponds and stuff. They do have more mosquitoes, and occasionally West Nile will show up there.
Okay.
Mark
That's
Mogalich lives real close to me, also about the same distance away, but he's high enough in elevation that they don't have any West Nile carrying mosquitoes up there.
Okay, good. Yeah, because it's a huge problem. You know, Amazon is like coming handy as a falconer because you can buy like this heavy duty, like almost like elastic UVB, like UV protected mosquito netting, or like it's for like crops, and you can buy it like by the roll, and it's not expensive at all. I bought like a giant like 120 by like 50-foot roll of this stuff, and like you can't even barely put like a razor knife through it. And I basically just like put it all around my my weathering areas for my birds, and just zip tied it so that it's like basically airtight. And then all like, you know, just because I have goshawks, and I'm just so paranoid about that. I never had a bird die of any kind of sickness, thank God, as of this moment. But I've seen videos of guys that live near me, like their birds just spazzing out in the ground, twitching, running around in circles. And it's just, I do not ever want to deal with I would rather my bird fly into a fence at 60 miles an hour and kill itself than be spazzing out in my kitchen floor, dying of some disgusting disease from a bug. You know what I mean?
Mosquito.
From a freaking mosquito.
A lot of my friends who are over in the parts of California where they raise a lot of rice, they have a hard time keeping goshawks alive because of that.
Yeah.
Way too much West Nile.
But they got good duck hawking, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Good friend of the show, Chris Kaiser. He deals with that in Arizona. They seem to they have a ton of mosquitoes during the rainy season, and it to me it kind of makes sense that because he's flying native goshawks from pulled from the mountains of Arizona, such an arid, dry environment that they would not have the resilience to West Nile like a bird pulled from Maine or pulled from the Pacific Northwest might have.
In the Pacific Northwest, actually, West Nile never really got established up there. And I don't know exactly. Well, let me clarify that a little bit. In the Seattle area, and I think in the Portland area, West Nile never really got established there, which is kind of an oddity. I mean, I went with the wind, but it always kind of puzzled me why we got so lucky. Where you used to be in New Jersey, Casey, that was the epicenter. That's where it all started. It came off of Plum Island and started in New Jersey and spread around the country from there.
Yeah, it did. And
another thing we can thank Jersey for.
Yeah, listen. I know you're saying that. You know that there's nothing in Spokane, in Washington, and Seattle, and stuff like that. But Bill Gates, once they release it in there, you know that. Listen, there's a rabbit hole. Listen, I'm a conspiracy person. You know that now, like they're unsealing redacted documents that they were releasing Lyme's disease on purpose, like in Virginia and stuff, to see how it would affect the population as like a test. You know that?
I was not. I had never heard this.
Well, yeah, Lyme's disease is 1,000 million gazillion % made by humans, and it was deliberately either released or got out of a lab. And so now there's actually documents that are actually confirming that now, that it was actually man-made, and there was evidence that they accidentally released it in Virginia to like see what it would do and how it would affect the population. It's just, yeah. And the West Nile thing, it acts similar to Lyme's disease, where it like attacks the nervous system. I mean, I don't understand how that would occur just naturally in the wild, like a disease.
The West Nile or the Lyme?
Both attack the nervous system. It definitely attacks the nervous system on both of them.
Well, what West Nile actually exists in Africa. That's why it's called West Nile.
Well, they
were studying it in a lab on Plum Island.
Yeah, they were studying it until they got bored of studying it, and then they went to do some real world tests on the peasants. That's what it was.
Hey, Casey, what do you think about COVID?
I think. No, just kidding. I mean, we all know already. Come on, I don't even
Come on, he doesn't even have to say it. Everybody knows what he thinks.
We already know. Listen. We know a bat bit a friggin', a little friggin' reptile, and then it bit a friggin', pangolin, and then the pangolin licked the friggin' trainer in the mouth, and then he spit on the ground, and then a bug laid an egg in it, and then the egg hatched and then flew into freaking China and then infected everybody with COVID.
We all know this. This is well known.
We know this already. It was all an accident.
Hey, Aaron, your question about goshawks and mosquitoes in the wild. Have you ever been to a goshawk nest?
I actually have been to a goshawk nest. I've actually found a goshawk nest.
Aaron found his first goshawk nest last year, and that's where this tiercel came from that I've been flying this season.
And
that's where moose came from, huh?
That's where moose came from.
Those damn things could carry you away.
Those mosquitoes, it was out of control.
Yeah, because most of the places that I have been looking for goshawks, you're close when you need 4 hands to swat the mosquitoes off your arms.
100%, which is so crazy because it's like, we're so paranoid as falconers of our birds dying from us now. How are these birds just sitting in a tree just getting, I mean, there's you would probably know better than me, but there's studies like up in Alaska of like gyrfalcons actually and moose calves and stuff like that being killed from just
dying from mosquitoes. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Like the ISs in the Eries that are getting, like, they're literally just getting the life sucked out of them by mosquitoes. Like that's a real thing, isn't it?
When it might be they're protected a little bit by being up in the tree, because I don't recall it could just be the excitement of climbing a goshawk tree. I forget that the mosquitoes are biting me, but I don't recall ever being bitten while I'm up in a tree. It's always getting up there, getting to the tree.
Sitting in a tree stand with your bow and arrow on your lap, waiting for a deer to walk by in September in New Jersey, you will get eaten alive 20 feet off the ground. Does not matter. Maybe 60 feet you won't, but 20 feet you're getting eaten alive.
Yeah, I've been into, I think it's 6 different goshawk nests that I've climbed into. 4 for me and 2 or 3 for other people, and all of them were about 60 to 70 feet off the ground.
That's no joke. What are you using? Spikes? Ascenders?
Yeah. Nope. I use pole spikes.
Sure.
Okay.
In fact, actually, the pole spikes that I own, I bought from Mike McDermott.
Really?
Yep.
Friend of the show, Mike McDermott.
Friend of the show, Mike McDermott. I say, hey, Mike, what do you think about coming on the show? Tyler Sladen said it would be okay if I text you. No. All right. All right, then. Have a good day.
He's like, Casey is like, you sure? And he goes, I strongly say no, or something like that.
Yeah. He said, yeah. And I texted Tyler. I said, yeah. Tyler's like, what'd he say? I was like, he just said no. And I was like, really? I said, yeah, he had no interest.
Good thing he did John's, right?
Yeah, I'm like, Tyler, don't worry about it. Tyler was trying to help us out. Tyler Sladen. He was trying to help us out, get Mike on the show. Mike is just done with dealing with like the people, the whole. He's just done. I don't blame him. No, I don't blame him. It's nothing personal. He's just like, no thanks. Not interested in chatting about falconry, and I'm good. I'm all set. I'm like, all right, no problem, Mike. It wasn't arrogance. It was just he's not into it, and I didn't take any offense to it whatsoever. But shout out to Tyler trying to help us out.
So, Geoff, you have, in addition to red tails and goshawks, have also flown Harris hawks, and you have some opinions for why people like Casey like to rag on them. I
do. I got to start this out by saying, or I want to start this out by saying, Harris hawks hate my guts. When I met the guy who was my sponsor in Utah, he was really big into Harris hawks. He was showing me around his buildings and showing me his birds. And his eyes got really big, and he one of the chambers that he showed me, the bird flew to the bars and started chewing on the bars. And I was so new to falconry and birds of prey, it didn't mean anything to me. And his eyes got really big, and he said, his comment was, wow, that bird's a bitch who hates everybody, but she especially hates you. I don't know what's going on there. I don't take it personal because I appreciate Harris Hawks, but they don't particularly excite me. My passion's for Goshawks, but I think I've got a lot of friends that really thumb their nose at people that fly Harris Hawks and Harris Hawk falconer and Harris Hawk falconry. And I had the good fortune when I was in Seattle to be around a bunch of people that really excelled with Harris Hawks and knew how to really push the limits. One example of that, a friend of mine who lived up in the Seattle area named Jerry, in 1984, he went down to the NAFA meet that was at Brigham City, Utah at the time, and by himself with one bird, he caught more headed jackrabbits than everything else caught at the meet combined. And at that time, that was when the NAFA meets were still competitive. And they wouldn't even give him a game pin because they considered jackrabbits to be vermin and didn't consider them to be game.
What?
And I had the good fortune of spending many, many hours out in the field with Jerry, and he just excelled with Harris Hawks. One of my former apprentices has just recently gotten into breeding Harris Hawks, and he really enjoys Harris Hawks. And he and I have talked about this a little bit. And I think the main reason people poke fun at Harris Hawks and people flying Harris Hawks is because most of the people that fly Harris Hawks bump along with a minimal amount of effort. And it's really easy to bag on them when they're just doing lazy falconry. And now I want to clarify that a little bit. Actually, one of my good friends is in that category. What he loves about Harris Hawks is he doesn't have to expend much effort. That it's really easy going lazy falconry, and that excites him. He's having fun. I'm not judgmental about that at all. But I think they get a bad rap because it's just so easy to train them, and so few people are willing to really push them. One of my friends in Seattle. Well, actually, I shouldn't call him a friend. He was my sponsor. One year somebody was, and he focuses on Harris Hawks. Well, he's been retired from falconry for a number of years, but when he did falconry, he focused on Harris Hawks. But somebody at a falconry picnic was teasing him and said, "Oh, you Harris Hawkers are just a bunch of bunny bumpers." And he got so pissed that next season he did nothing but chase ducks, and he caught 47 ducks on the rise with his Harris Hawk that year, and accidentally caught one rabbit that kicked up when he was flushing ducks.
It's awesome.
I've never been able to catch things with Harris Hawks when I didn't manage their weight seriously. They just kind of fly around and half-ass things. And
man, when I've been around. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just, people talk about Harris Hawks and say that, you don't really need to manage their weight or they're easy. It's never been that way for me. Now, it might be that way on the West Coast where you kick bunnies out of, tumbleweeds on your way to your hawking spot. But
well, okay. So to clarify, hunting in the Seattle area is not walking around kicking stuff out of tumbleweeds in your tennis shoes.
I wasn't thinking Seattle. I'm thinking
it's thick, hard cover.
I think Seattle is probably more similar to the East Coast, and as far as
I don't consider
green,
when I'm
a lot of blackberries and stuff there, from what I understand.
Yes.
Yeah, I've hunted out of blackberry briars that covered over 30 uninterrupted acres. One briar patch, 30 acres. And I was hunting out of it.
True.
Yeah, there's rabbits in there, I would bet. The blackberry haunt. So the blackberries are the one, because we have those here. Are those the ones that go down and then they go into the ground?
Purple.
And then
purple.
And they go into the ground and then come up out of the ground and go into the ground. When you're walking through them, they don't even move out of your way. They basically noose your feet, and you either have to break them or it rips the whole root ball out of the ground.
Yep.
Yeah, those are like hell on earth to hawk through.
Rabbits
like a
love them though.
I have them in my back there in the woods. They're a nightmare. So go on.
So go ahead, Geoff.
No, that pretty much covers the input I had on on why so many people bag on Harris hawks. I think people just think
Yeah.
they're too easy. Well, there's a lot of people that don't put in the effort and fly them easy. And there's also a lot of people that think they're too easy to train. And they are pretty easy to train, but it's not real easy to get them to really perform. And your statement surprised me, Aaron. My experience being out with a fat Harris hawk is they hunt just as hard as a at weight Harris hawk, except you can't get them to stop hunting. Like I've been out a few times, usually with my apprentice Jared, when he screwed up and his birds were a little fat, and I'd just say, well, all right, good luck getting your bird back to the car. I'll see you later, buddy. Because as soon as he starts heading back to the car with his birds and they realize the hunt's over, their response is, yeah, screw you. I'm still having fun, buddy.
See, that's a properly
totally
trained
different
Harris
of what
hawk.
I've seen.
I've seen them going back to the truck trying to get you to go back to the truck with them.
Beating you to the truck. So
yeah, I don't like that. That's one thing that bothers me. No, I agree with you 100%. I think that you can catch game of the Harris hawk with very minimal effort, and you can still have a lot of fun, and it's a blast, and it's just very fun to make fun of those people. And there's nothing wrong with them. And there's literally nothing wrong with them, and I'm not bagging on them. If you are a busy person, like I get it. Like I almost wish that I never like got into goshawks, because then I would just be like oblivious to another realm of falconry. I'd just be like, oh, cool. I got 2 kids. I got a small business to run. I got a bunch of stuff going on in my life. I could just go out with a Harris hawk and it would just follow me and go back to the truck, and we catch a bunch of stuff and go home. Yeah, great. I don't have to deal with little behavioral issues that I got to work out in the freaking front lawn of my house with a headlamp on the phone with Steve Lehman for 2 hours. Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be super nice. But once you discover it and you have that stupid personality that we have, like you just can't turn it off. So like
what was I telling you this year, Casey, when we were out?
And we were
regarding goshawks.
I don't remember. No, I don't remember.
How much I feel left out not having one.
Yeah. Aaron was going through a little thing where, my bird was just doing these insane, acrobatic maneuvers, chasing these squirrels. And then Aaron's red tail would just smash a squirrel and it was over. And he was like, I kind of feel left out. I'm like, well, you caught 7 rabbits in a day and a half. And I caught, or squirrels rather. And I caught 3 squirrels, and 1 rabbit in the same amount of time. So you caught more than me, and you should just be happy. It wasn't as cool, but yeah, you felt left out this season.
I want to always have a red tail, and I always want to have a goshawk.
I think it's a perfect combo.
Yeah,
it's a perfect combo. So now, wait. I want to get into. You were saying that because you sent us like a biography, which was excellent. Thank you so much for saying that. We don't get that a lot from a lot of our guests.
Oh, I thought that was the price of admission, man. That's what you told me, Casey.
No, just because I know that you've been around for a long time. You're friends with Steve, and you've done a lot of stuff. So I
you're
thought
a mysterious guy. We need to know more about you.
You're the gray ghost. You're the ponytailed gray ghost in the West. So I wanted to see what you're all about, because it's very hard to find info about you, especially because on Facebook, it's not even, it's an alias. So I had to narrow down what you're all about. And you said something in there about you wanted to discuss goshawks and chasing squirrels.
All right. Yeah, this is mostly because I've heard this come up as a controversial statement a few times in some of your prior episodes.
Very much so.
Yeah. I'm pausing for a second, organizing my thoughts here.
Organize them well, because I'm very passionate about the subject.
One of the prior shows that got me kind of thinking about this was when you talked to Gary Brewer, and I've had some interactions with him online of many years ago through email and through some other contact, and it was your interview with him where he was talking for however long that episode was, that I finally had a real solid appreciation of Gary and where Gary comes from. So I really appreciated that episode. He made the statement that red tails are the best squirrel hawk full stop. And what I realized as he was saying that is I think he's focused on his environment in Texas where there are no goshawks. But if you look at the goshawk range, currently Old World goshawks and New World goshawks are divided into two different species that was biologically redefined about when was that? 2 years ago or so. But regardless, if we still pretend they're all one species, if you look throughout their range, one of their primary prey item is almost always squirrels. Goshawks are evolved to be, or if you prefer created, doesn't really matter which adjective you use there, but goshawks are designed and engineered to be a primary predator of squirrels wherever they live. Down in the southeast where you have fox squirrels, maybe a goshawk's not a good choice for those because, there aren't eagle-sized goshawks chasing those 20-pound squirrels or however big those damn things get.
Yeah, they're huge.
But, using that overall model of thinking about goshawks in the areas where they live, those little black rainforest goshawks that we were talking about earlier, the biggest squirrel that lives up in that area is one of the smallest tree squirrels in North America. They're about 10 times the size of a chipmunk. Let me compare them to an eastern gray squirrel because both species exist there, and I saw them side by side. They're about 1/3 the size of an eastern gray squirrel. So
what
little
type
tiny
of squirrel
goshawk.
is this?
They're called Douglas squirrels.
Okay, because Aaron's trying to do like the Grand Slam of squirrels throughout the United States, so now he has to add that to his list. So he has to go catch one now.
They're legally protected in Washington, so you have to leave it lay.
Well, we'll take
and do it by accident.
Is there a state that they're not legally protected?
I don't know. I know their range extends down into California, and I think it extends down into Oregon and possibly down into California. Actually, I could ask the Googleator machine while we're talking.
Googleator. You sound like my dad. The YouTubes.
Yeah, look it up on the YouTubes.
Look it up on the YouTubes. I'm telling you, they're trying to get us all, man. Look out.
So, all right.
So I think using a goshawk to hunt an appropriate, they're down into California also. I think using a goshawk to hunt a appropriate for the size of goshawk that you've got squirrel is completely legit. And the best flights I ever saw hunting goshawks in the Seattle area were chasing squirrels. It was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Scared the shit out of me because I didn't really have the understanding that, goshawks adapted to hunting squirrels and they know how to handle them. And I just had vision of my bird catching it and losing all her toes. But every time gray squirrels were not real common in the areas that I was hunting. But if there was ever so much of a flick of a tail of a gray squirrel, the game was afoot and I was not, there was no way to get my goshawk disengaged from hunting that squirrel until it was either caught or had found refuge in a hole.
Yeah. I think that's just, it's just, the conversation and / debate with Gary went on, I think, longer than it should have. Aaron thinks it went longer than it should have. I probably should have pulled back a little bit, but it is a subject that's I'm passionate about because there's so much stigma behind it. And the fact that it was brought up, I kind of wanted to, and I kind of ended up beating a dead horse. But yeah, it's just scientifically a fact that goshawks predate on squirrels, not only red squirrels, but gray squirrels as well. And in, like you said, in Europe, like the Finnish birds, like they're eating a ton of squirrels, like a lot of squirrels.
Well, you go all across their range in Europe and Asia, they're eating squirrels where they're at. And one thing that's actually really unusual about North America in terms of goshawks is we have a wide variety of squirrels. Compared to like most of the places where goshawks occur in Europe and Asia, there's one, maybe two species, but there's a lot of squirrel species in North America.
Correct. Yeah.
And I know John Goodell is one of your big fans, but
he loves us.
Oh, friend of the show.
Yeah. He's one of the ones that really opened me up to this when he and I were kind of when I was seeing some of the stuff he was posting, I think on NAFX when that was still a thing, discussing it, and he had some real solid data backing it up that I found fascinating. He's got a big passion for goshawks and their natural history.
It's a shame he has a one-way ticket to never being on this show.
I'd love to get him on the show, just but he despises us.
Remember what I was saying earlier about eccentric personalities and how they don't get along? I think that really applies to him.
I guess. I mean,
he's so excited that I have a manuscript of the Imprint from Mike McDermott with a handwritten letter to my sponsor. My sponsor gave me a bunch of books that were his, and the Imprint Volume 1 with a handwritten letter asking my sponsor what he thinks about it. And I was going to send it to them, but on second thought, I think I won't.
No.
Yeah. Aaron, the archives of falconry is much bigger than the guy who's sitting in the chair as the archivist running it at the moment. But
as soon as the next guy is running it, because I'm quite a youthful gentleman, I can wait. I can wait him out. So
I think you can. And that's a fair statement.
We'll be waiting, John.
John, we're waiting for you.
If you ever are in Boise, I really recommend you go through it. It is a really cool thing.
We'll have to go in with me and Casey. Will go in. He'll be on my shoulders. We're in a giant jumpsuit.
A jumpsuit. I'm on Aaron's shoulders with a pair of big glasses. The fake
with Groucho Marx glasses and a hat. We're just here to observe the archives.
Yeah.
I mean, I am just here to observe the
archives. Oh, man. So, wait, is the archives is where they do the rendezvous, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I saw they're pushing that now. They're getting smarter now. They got Paige, Connor's wife, doing the social media for them now. They're finally, I think they're getting with the times finally. I wonder where that push came from.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. No idea. I wonder who's been talking about it to 10,000 plus people each month.
Whoever it was will get no credit.
Zero credit, but it's okay. Good for them, though. Getting
that's
with the times.
All right. If you don't want to give anyone credit, that's okay.
We're here for falconry. Right. That's what we're here for.
So, Geoff,
on that question about squirrels and goshawks, I don't have a whole lot of my own in-depth experience, but I think goshawks are well suited as predators for squirrels, as long as it's an appropriate size.
I saw Casey's female North American when we were in Ohio. She did like a 30-foot vertical. No joke. She did a 30-foot vertical into a separate tree, a squirrel at the very top, and sustained no bites. Casey has all the evidence.
We have all the evidence, as Gary kept saying. The evidence. I have all the evidence. Yeah, we obtained lots of evidence. That video is going to be hilarious.
Let's clarify, we got nothing but respect for him. It's just a disagreement, and that was it was made obvious live and in person. Super nice guy, trailblazer.
One of the things that jumped out at me on that episode where you had the extensive conversation with him that I didn't have an appreciation of before is Gary's view of the world is limited to what he's experienced. And when he's talking about
ours are.
Yeah, exactly. All of us are limited by that. But when Gary's talking about the best bird to hunt squirrels with, full stop, as a red tail, he's talking about where he's at in Texas. And I wouldn't dispute that.
Yeah.
Because I've never been there and tried to hunt squirrels there.
I would have to say, probably based on what I have seen generally, I don't think there's a better bird than a female red tail for squirrels.
I think that it's I do agree that the female red tail is probably the best, like for the majority of the country where you're at, it's probably the best bird for squirrels. But I don't think that a goshawk, in thick, tight, very, like in certain, up in Maine, in those insanely tight forests, like I don't think a red tail is going to do very good up there.
There's not
chasing
really any
squirrels.
squirrels there, though.
No, there are gray squirrels all the way up and through there. I mean, Tammy's chasing them all the way up. You can pull out of her driveway, turn left, and you're in Canada. I mean, she's all the way
And
up
they
there.
have gray squirrels there.
Chasing them all the time. She caught a bunch this year. Yeah, they're all over. Yeah, so that whole concept just falls flat. There's gray squirrels all over. Chasing.
I very often run into red tails when I'm deep in Goshawk woods. You know that you don't think of them as being a woodland species, but they do just fine in there.
Yeah, as Aaron would say in the Bear Grease video, they are a forest hawk, right, Aaron? That's what you said.
Well, followed up by saying they inhabit every ecosystem in the United States.
Yeah, that was the only critique of the videos that Aaron said a red tail's a forest.
We were wrong about that because they are a forest hawk in addition to every other.
Right, in addition to a plains hawk and a savanna hawk and a.
I said it on the video.
No, you did it. He just asked, did I say anything stupid? And I said the only thing that anybody could say is that you kind of referred to a red tail as a forest hawk, but then you saved it later, like 5 seconds later.
And it's not just North America. They go all the way down to Central America. They're on all the Caribbean islands. Those are a really diverse species.
Yeah, they're a Caribbean hawk too, Aaron.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, their scientific name, Buteojamaicans, is because they were first described in Jamaica.
Jamaica.
The red tail hawk down here, killing the squirrel in the woods, man.
Killing all the island squirrels, man. Feeling Irish.
We kill all the squirrels. We have all the evidence to kill all the squirrels, man. The red tail is the best by far. Don't tell me anything different. Bomba clat.
Well, we can tell they got Jamaicans in Jersey. So
they're all over down here, man.
Geoff, we're approaching 2 hours. There's some subjects that you really wanted to get to, so I want to make sure that we do.
All right, I guess we better hit them before we run out of gas in the tank.
I got gas all night. It's this guy with the blanket on his lap over here.
It's this guy who works for the state of North Carolina who has to be up at 6 a.m. and be at work at 7:45 at the metal.
I'm up at 4 a.m. every day, bro.
You're up at 4 a.m. scrolling on your phone.
Yeah, sending memes to people.
Hey, one quick question I had for Casey though. Who made the hood that you're using on Moose?
Okay, so I got a hood from Barber, very well made hood. It was just pulling the feathers out of his head every single time I took it off, so I got rid of it. Sponsor of the show, very generous. He noticed that the hood was an issue, took it upon himself to bless me with a hood from Western Sporting, but it's not like, I don't think it's on their website. It's like a special order hood.
Okay.
From Western Sporting, and it's one of their hood makers. I don't even know. Seth it just showed up at my house, and I said
that's another enemy of the podcast, Western Sporting.
Yes, they're an enemy of the thing because their BC trap lasted one trapping season and then it started falling apart.
Oh yeah,
so I don't know who made it, but it's an accordion back and it slips right. It's a very beautiful hood. It's a great hood. Thank you, Seth, again for that hood. It was really nice. He's not listening, but.
Yeah, I know your friend James Maynard is a big fan of the hoods that a friend of mine makes. I thought that might have been where you got it.
It may be, yeah. I know that James likes accordion back hoods. Yeah,
Larry Ray is the hood maker that James uses.
Is that not the same? Is that not the same guy from Western Sporting? He makes. Okay, all right, yeah, but yeah, Seth said that he got a couple from that hood maker. I can't remember the guy's name. I'm sorry. And he said it's really nice. You should look into it. And then 2 weeks after we were hawking, it showed up at my house with a hood protector. So thank you, Seth.
Wow. Right. One of the things I really wanted to get to was the importance of putting our really good birds into breeding programs. Because good, if you want good falconry birds, you got to put good birds into breeding programs. And one thing that just drives me bonkers, perfect example of this, I was out hunting with a friend of mine a couple of decades ago. This was back in Seattle. And he was flying, he's a big breeder. breeds falcons and breeds Harris hawks. The Harris hawks are just kind of a passion side project. But while we were out hunting with his Harris hawks, he made the statement, "Yeah, I really don't like these birds. They hunt like crap. I guess I'm just going to put them in the in my breeding program and make more babies out of them."
Yeah.
And that is the absolute worst thing to do, because if you're putting crappy birds into the breeding programs, you're going to get crappy birds back out. And that's exactly why when we were talking earlier about that really good goshawk that I had, that I decided he was going in a breeding program, because I want the next generation of goshawks to maybe be a little bit better, because I don't know if it's genes or the nature nurture thing. I don't know which of those are at play with that particular bird, but and that's actually true of any bird. It may be genes that makes it really good, or it may just be luck. Maybe it was in the hands of a good falconer that made it really good. But if you have excellent birds and you put them together to breed more excellent birds, there's a really good chance that the babies are going to be really good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. What episode was that, Aaron, where we were talking about? Oh, with the Coulsons, right?
Yeah, they're being very intentional with what they breed.
Yes, they're treating it almost like breeding dogs, where they won't breed to a bird or acquire a bird unless it's like proven in the field like an exceptional bird, which I think is really smart.
One of my friends from the Seattle area, when I was talking about people that push the envelope with Harris hawks and fly them really well, this guy's another example of that. Toby Bradshaw went to school in Louisiana and was really good friends with the Coulsons while he was down there going to college. Then after he graduated, he got a job up in Seattle and moved up there. But his name doesn't get out a whole lot, but he's the, using the metaphor from the Wizard of Oz of the man behind the curtain that's actually running things. The Coulsons put in all the work for their breeding project, but he's a geneticist by training, so he understands selective breeding and teasing out genetic traits. And he's the one that taught the Coulsons how to pick good birds and put good birds together.
Oh, wow.
Real fascinating guy. Unfortunately, he's also kind of antisocial and doesn't like talking to people very much.
The best guests that we like, some of the guests that we try to get on that would be phenomenal, they're just like you said, they're antisocial. They don't want to talk. And I mean, it's like, that's fine, but it's annoying because it's like, it would be good info for people, but it's like just getting them over the hurdle to come on the show. And so he sounds like somebody that would be interested, we'd be interested in talking to, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Yeah. There is a database for Harris hawks where you can put in information on the traits for the bird that you've got. And the whole reason why that database was put together was so that it would be easy to find good birds to pair up and make more good birds out of them. And the Coulsons have a well-deserved reputation for producing really good birds, but it starts with good data. It starts with having good birds going into the breeding program. And like you said, Casey, the Coulsons are really, really picky about what they'll put into a breeding program. And for years and years and years, Tom would go out to meets and go out hunting with people with Harris hawks and tell them, hey, if you're ready to put that bird in a breeding program, I would love to have it because I think it'll make excellent babies.
Yeah.
And when my goshawk got killed, that one I was using in my breeding program, the one I talked about that got killed by the red tail, that was a female that I was using in my breeding program. I was trying really hard, put the word out on social media, asking people if they have an excellent goshawk and they'd like to put it in a breeding program for more excellent goshawks, please let me know. And Keith Gardner got a hold of me and he said, hey, I've got this bird that I've been trying to get in a breeding program. And, he and I got on the phone and I heard nothing but great things about this goshawk that he had. And she's in my breeding program right now, hoping to get eggs out of her and hopefully fertile babies soon.
Do you have a website?
No, I don't.
Okay. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to order, just asking for a friend? if they want to, get a bird from you this spring.
Well, you know how to get a hold of me, so have your friend get a hold of me.
Yeah. Okay.
So I got my first I first got my breeding permit in 2000, and the whole reason why I got it was so that the goshawk I had on my falconry permit could complete her life cycle. And I never took it any more seriously than that until about 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And because I've just been a not very serious breeder, not really trying very hard, I haven't produced anything. Last year was the first year I had any progress, and I had 2 eggs that were fertile. One of them died about 4 to 5 days before hatching. None of them hatched.
Oh,
that's as far as I've got in terms of being a successful breeder. And when I actually am to the point where I'm producing things, then I'll put the word out.
Gotcha.
Until then, I just want to keep kind of a low profile. But
you got it. Well, there's 2 guys right here that would love to test out some of your birds. So,
all right. Well, these 2 guys, I'll get a hold of you if I have anything hatched this year.
Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah. And I really think that I got Betsy out there, and she's from Moglich, and she's a hefty, pure North American, and she's I think what, Aaron, we figured it out because I forgot this is going to be her 4th season coming up.
Right.
Yeah, so she'd be a prime candidate for a breeding facility, operation, and she's probably the best bird that I've ever flown.
One thing that makes that really hard to assess, though, is do people really know if they've got their hands on a good bird?
When you fly 10 goshawks and one is just second season just smashing into bushes like 10 feet behind a rabbit, you're like, all right, well, this one.
But if you've only flown
very bright,
but if you've only flown one.
Oh yeah, then it doesn't.
It's
you gotta
hard
go
to
fly.
assess.
You got to go fly with somebody that's flown a bunch, and they gotta watch that bird. It's a lot of legwork. But yeah, I've flown quite a few, and Betsy is by far she's quite the accomplished. She's a good bird.
I've flown about a dozen or so goshawks, and none of them have been bad. Some have been better than others, and only one of them has been excellent.
I've had some bad ones. Some bad ones, and a lot of it was user error. But then a couple of secondhand birds, so they don't. I guess they don't really count as a good assessment. But ones I've raised myself, I've had a few, like Helga, the 50-50 Finnish, no, 3/4 North America, 3/4 Siberian, 1/4 Finn from out in California. I forgot the breeder's name, Mick something. Aaron, you know him, right? Somebody knows him that you know. McBride, Andy McBride. She's not the brightest. She was not the brightest bird by any means. Very, very strange.
She had some good qualities, though.
No, she had some good qualities. I mean, you could fly her with 3 lurchers, 7 dachshunds, a Springer Spaniel, and 15 people in the field, and she'd catch 3 rabbits in 45 minutes, 30 minutes. Zero, did not care about anything like that. But in terms of her like common sense and survivability, it was not very bright. Not very bright. It was like a 60% catch rate on slips. And the North American and even moose, this Tiercel, I mean, the Tiercel, he's like a late Poldias. I don't even know what you would consider him for a breeding project, but that bird is just a machine. Just a machine, just dealing with fear, not an imprint, not a wild bird, something in the middle. And it's just like if the rabbit flushes, there's like an 80-90% chance he's going to catch it. And if he gets his feet on it, it's a 98% chance he's keeping it.
One of the tamest goshawks I've ever seen was, I actually climbed the tree. Seth Lehman took the bird. And I climbed the tree for him, and it was about the same age as when you pulled moose when he took it.
Okay. Did he deal with any kind of issues with fear? Because that bird was fearful from the second we got it back to the Airbnb.
Yeah,
fear.
After you were posting videos when you were driving home with Moose, and I saw how old Moose was, I actually got on the phone with Steve to refresh my memory on whether he had to deal with any fear issues, and he said that, yeah, there was a lot.
Okay.
And I didn't have. This was actually. I think that bird was when Steve really started thinking about avoiding fear when you're taking a bird out of the nest.
Yeah.
Because that bird's name was Yo-Yo. And when I climbed the tree and got up to the point where I looked over the lip of the nest, both tercels ran to the back. There were two tercels in the nest, and they both ran to the back of the nest, and they were right on the verge of jumping out.
Mm.
And so there was a lot of fear when I reached in and grabbed one and put it in the bag and lowered it to the bottom of the tree. But you seem to have done good with moose. You got over that.
It was also that whole situation was I really can't take any credit for it other than just persistence. And I was on the phone constantly. Steve helped me in the beginning, and then I switched over to Isaac Gale. You know Isaac?
I do know Isaac.
Okay, so all the success that I found with this bird was basically because of Isaac.
I could tell you were getting. Yeah, I could tell you were getting frustrated in the beginning, and I didn't know you were in contact with Steve, but I was trying to get you in touch with Steve. And then when I found out you were working with Isaac, I actually, you posted a video and you mentioned Isaac's name, and I texted Isaac and asked if he was helping you with it. And as soon as I knew you were getting coached by Isaac, I went, all right,
Casey's going to be all right.
Casey's in good hands.
Yeah. No, Isaac's the best. Steve's the best. I just, I could have just went with Steve, but we had Isaac on the show, and then we were like talking about birds like through text message, and I just kind of latched on to Isaac rather than muddying the waters with other inputs. I just let Isaac kind of guide me, and I just followed everything. And Isaac's just like tease the aggression, make him want to kill you, make him want to take your head off in there. And I'm like, but I open the door and he flies into the wall and freaks out, and he's going, doesn't matter, just go in. Just tease him. Okay, he's on the glove now. Oh my gosh, good job. Okay, now take the food away from him. And I'm like, why? He's like, just take it away from him and tease him with it. Make him try to kill you. And I'm like, all right. And I'm like, and he's like, let's mask the fear with the aggression. Let's make him want to kill you. And then let's take the aggression, like Steve said, and let's use it.
Yeah, and, like that quote I mentioned earlier in our conversation where Steve said, aggression I can shape.
Fear is so hard to work with fear, man. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was talking to Aaron, right? Aaron, I'm like, what the hell am I going to, I'm like, sending him videos. He's like, how bad could it be? And I like sent him a video of the bird just like flying into the wall of the mew and like landing on the ground. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? Like, what am I going to do? This thing is terrible. You know what I mean? It's like, and then it was like, and then I talked to Seth, and Seth's like, well, like you should just get a hood on him. And I'm like, I could do that. And it was like, and then Isaac's like, no hood. That will work, but you're forcing it. He's like, let's make it his idea. That's why I like, and I was like, whatever, it's the summertime. I got kids. I would put my kids to bed and just go out there, and I'd literally just sit on the floor of the mew with my AirPods in, listening to an audiobook or a podcast. And I would just have like a big juicy rabbit leg on the ground, and I would just be dangling it, and he'd be up there looking at it. And I would just do that with him. I didn't care. I really just didn't care. I was like, whatever, if he's going to, and I had to get him low. Yeah, I had to get him real low. And once he got low, and then once I decided to slip the hood on, once he was eating from the glove and I got the equipment on him and I got the hood on him, after it was his idea, then he became the sweetest gentleman of a bird I've ever had in my life. And the only reason why in my videos he mantles is because he doesn't like the dogs around. He cannot stand the dogs. Well, if the dogs are not around, he eats like a chamber bird, tucked up, no mantling, just eats.
Mantling shows a lack of trust, not necessarily in the falconer, but it's usually in the falconer.
Right.
I never saw it as a bad thing. I just worked with it.
I don't care.
One of my good friends who also was a very influential mentor when I was first learning to work with Goshawks, Phil Smith. He used to live in Seattle. He's in Missouri somewhere now. I kind of lost track of where he's at, but he would refer to a mantling goshawk as a glove umbrella. And hunting in the rain all the time, I liked it.
Yeah, right.
When I had a parent, the one year that I flew a parent reared bird produced by Lance Christensen, who I have developed a lot of respect for. The first time I had it on the glove and I was and I was feeding it, my initial thought was, damn it, now my glove's going to get drenched.
Isn't it weird though? It's so like, it's almost like unnatural the way that those true like parent reared birds, like they don't mantle at all. It almost looks like bizarre. Isn't it weird?
Well, it struck me as bizarre because I'd always worked with imprints and I just wasn't used to it.
That's how my view is, I guess. I'm just not used to seeing a bird just sitting completely tucked, like on a fresh rabbit. It's so weird.
This past season, I was looking really closely at a lot of the videos that Tyler Sladen had posted of, what's he call that bird that he worked with this year? Gulag. And the thing that jumped out at me was Tyler did a brilliant job of instilling trust in that bird. That bird just implicitly, from what I can tell from the videos, just implicitly trusts him. And next goshawk I raise, I think there's a new threshold there that I'm going to try and focus on to, get that trust and learn how to deal with a bird that doesn't mantle. I think that's possible.
It is possible, but I think, but that's the other thing that I like to push on my page, my personal page and on the show is that, you can try to strive for, like Tyler with a bird, like an imprint that doesn't mantle, but 98% of imprints are going to mantle to some degree or another. And I just think that that's part of it, and they'll settle down and you can work through it. But when it's your first bird, and this video is coming out perfect, this episode's coming out perfect timing because last year around the same time we did an episode with Tyler on how he raises imprints, and this year we're kind of doing one with you on how like your whole philosophy, and your whole philosophy is sprinkled in throughout this entire episode on how you do it, and it gives a lot of good thought to the listener on how to raise an imprint. And I just think that that information you either have to deliberately find, get a book and sit and read the entire book. And in this episode, what we're trying to do with the show, especially this time of year, is trying to like give you almost like a little guide, a little thought process, a way to like switch your way of thinking, the way that you wouldn't reward your bird if she's giving you the stink eye. Like all that stuff is like to somebody who doesn't know and they just get their first bird. They're just like, oh, she's hungry. Here, okay, here's your food. Leave me alone. It's like, and that's like the worst thing you could do. So like it's good information for the audience. So that's
there's another aspect of that I've actually been thinking a bunch about real recently. The whole time that I've been working with goshawks, I've heard people talk about how imprint goshawks have territorial aggression if you feed them in the mew. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I have this friend that I was kind of coaching on working with her first goshawk who's in Colorado. And she was describing some behaviors that she was having when she went into the mew to feed her goshawk. And she labeled it as territorial aggression. And I said, my initial response was, oh, that's not territorial aggression. That's something else. And then right after I was talking to her, I got on the phone with Steve and I was describing, the behavior, which is, the stink eye and slamming at the bars and those kinds of behavioral things. And when I talked to Steve, I said, hey, when people see these kinds of behaviors when they're goshawks in the mew, where they're getting aggressive and they're charging the door and they're and they're grabbing their hand if they stick their hand in there, is that what people are calling territorial aggression? And he said, oh yeah, that's exactly what they're calling territorial aggression. And, he and I had a more extensive talk about that. And I had seen those behaviors early on with my very first goshawk. I went out to feed her in the mew when I wasn't working with her and I just wanted to keep things easy by throwing food at her. And she was sitting on the perch. She was looking aggressive and I just turned and I walked away. And then I went back 5 minutes later and, there's an important thing to understand. What she wanted was for me to throw the food. That's why she was giving me the stink eye, and that's why she was leaning forward, and that's why she was giving me aggressive body language. And as soon as I turned and walked away, what's going on in her head is something along the lines of, fuck, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so when I come back, she can posture a little aggressively, but she can't give me the stink eye, and she has to be on the perch in the back of the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And if I come back and she's behaving herself, I'll throw the food in. And then she's learning, oh, the way I get the food is I don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
And so when I was having this conversation with this friend of mine in Colorado, I had this tiercel goshawk that I mentioned that was fantastic. The following year, I bought his little brother to keep me from, same breeder, same parents. I bought his little brother to keep me from being tempted to pull him out of the mew and fly him, because I had so much fun with him his first season. And his little brother was sitting on, like, I didn't have a chamber for him. Like a lot of falconers, I fall into this scenario where I have more birds than places to put them.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He was just living in a weathering yard. And I went out to feed him, and I videoed it and sent it to this friend of mine in Colorado. He was sitting on the perch, completely unrestrained, and I handed him a full back leg from a cottontail rabbit, and he just took it in his beak like a perfect little gentleman and hopped down on the ground and ate it. And that the reason why I sent her that video was just as an example of where you can get to if you just don't reward them when they're being nasty to you, and wait that out.
It takes like 3 days.
Oh, I think it takes a lot longer than that, depending on how bad it got before you started. But
I'm saying to get them to do what you want. So like I got birds, like I was making a joke, like, oh, that's interesting that you don't have enough space, because I have birds on perches in weathering areas, and they know exactly why I'm walking to the chamber, because it's feeding time and I can't like hide it. Like I don't have a food chute. Like they see me coming and they start getting all riled up because they know I'm coming. And I have I have too many videos of this, of me holding the quail in my bare hand in front of their face. And, some of the newer ones that are learning, they'll bait at it a couple times, but then you'll see them, they'll turn, look at me over their shoulder, not mantling. And then they start baiting to the end of their leash away from me, bait, 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 away from me towards the corner of the mew, because they know when I bait in the corner away from him, he drops the food and I can have it.
Yeah.
And it takes literally 3 days. You just stand there with the food. They bait at it. It's right out of their reach. They bait at it. And then once they accidentally or whatever go the other direction, you drop the food. You go on the next day, they bait like half the amount of time and then like hop around. Like it's like almost like they're trying to like play a game. Like, where do I have to step to get the food? And then once they step to the furthest length of their leash away from me, then I drop it. And then the next day, literally, like they just start baiting the other direction to get away, because the food comes when they do that.
From the point of view of the bird, he's training you.
Well, he's training me, but I'm also training him. Like flying at my face or flying at my chest or flying at my hand gets you nowhere. If you go away from me, then the food gets released and you can have it. So that's like where my mind is when I'm limited on space. But yeah,
but from the point of view of that bird, he's spending a lot of mental energy going, how do I train this bozo to drop that food? What do I got to do to get him to do that for me?
Exactly. It's his idea.
Yeah, it's his idea.
Go away from me. And it's your idea. Yeah. How do I get yeah, exactly. I'm thinking, I'm training this guy to fly away from me. In his mind, he's saying, how do I get this idiot to drop the food?
Right.
Oh, I just go to the end of my leash away to the furthest corner of the chamber and I get the food.
That's a very advanced way to think of animal training, to put yourself in the animal's position and think of that animal trying to train you instead. And let yourself be trained. Let him train you.
Every time I catch a rabbit, I got this guy trained to give me food.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, but it's like, and talking to layman, and listen, layman's not like Chat GPT. Like, not everybody can just talk to him. So it's like, I feel blessed to have the opportunity to have talk to him and work through at least 2, 3, 2.5, 3 birds, like birds that are bound to the glove, like secondhand birds that are just a mess. And like just have him in my AirPods, literally in my yard, walking around in circles on a crayons with tidbits in my pocket. What does she look like? Okay, all right. How are Hackle? I'm like, dude, she's mantled. Like, it's not mantled. All right, give her some time. And I'm walking crunch, crunch, crunch through the snow. And he's just in my ear, just patiently waiting. And he's like, how does she look now? I'm like, not really. Oh, okay. She just tucked the wing. She just tucked one wing and just reset one foot. Okay, chuck the tidbit. I'm like, okay, chuck the tidbit. Chases it. Back on the glove.
That bird in that moment, tucking like that was training you to chuck the tidbit. That's how the bird looks at it.
Well, she didn't know it yet, but then it became to the point where then the bird is just like literally loose-footed, completely tucked, bobbing. Just because I had a couple conversations with layman, and you can just, like you said, like you said earlier, where you get confident, where you're almost like, I'll fix it later. It's a real thing because you're like, whatever, she's getting a little crazy. I'll just fix it later. And Aaron saw it. My bird is, I'm not going to say who it was. Bet she's a lost cause. What'd she say? What did that person say? She's a lost cause?
A failure.
She's a failure. So year one, she was a beast. Phenomenal. Year two was a failure. And then this past year, Aaron saw her. It just took it just took me just taking an extra couple minutes every day. And now she's back to where she was first season. Just an angel. Just sits in the glove, chases everything. No aggression, really. Just action. I mean, she'll jump off and grab the dogs, but that's not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
But other than that,
actually, it was the last bird I raised. I got a little bit lazy with the raising. I still did my method of the lure training and the operant conditioning and whatnot, but he was a little spicy. If I went to hand him food with my bare hand, I would get footed, and I just dealt with it. And then this last falconry season, I finally decided, screw it, I'm not going to deal with it anymore. I'm going to make him be a gentleman. And in just a few days, I had him from where he would foot my bare hand with both feet if he saw food in it. In just a few days, I had him to where he would sit on the glove without me having to hang on to the jesses, and I could pull up like a full jackrabbit leg, and he would bite off tidbits off of it, and then I could put it back in my pocket, and we could go do something else. Just in a few days, I had him there.
Once you lay like the groundwork to like the shaping, the whole concept of like shaping, and I'm not like an intellectual, like analytical person. I just allowed my brain to kind of switch to that thought process by Steve and then Isaac. And it's like, once you like think of it, same thing, like we were talking about, you can't not see it anymore. I was talking about somebody else about politics, but anyway, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's like, once you see what it is that you're trying to do, and once somebody explains to you, like we're doing on this show with the behavioral stuff, you can't unsee it. So of course your bird is trying to smash the door when you're going in there to feed it, because it knows the food's going to pop out of the door. But if you just take a little time, the bird won't do that anymore, because you could just teach it that smashing against the door, coming towards you for food, it will never get any food ever. You'll just keep walking away as long as it takes. And then eventually, if it sits in the corner of the mew calmly, then you will toss the food onto the ground, and then it can come down and get the food. Once you figure out that little thought process, it's really not like a mind, this is not like a very complicated thought process to have.
Right. The other solution to that is what a lot of people do, which is just never feed them in the mew, or only feed them through a food chute. That works too, but
it just takes less effort, and it's a lot. It's sad. And listen, I got food chutes in my mews just for speed, and I got 4 birds I got to feed, so I don't have time to go in there to every bird and be like, and hold the the quail and like do this stupid thing. Like, I don't have time for that. But if the bird's in the weathering area, I have no choice, because I can't let them. I'm walking up to them with food. Like, there's no way to hide it. Like, it's a clear weathering area with mesh around it. Like, they can see.
Yeah, I use food chutes too for when I'm out of town and my neighbor's feeding or something like that.
Yeah, my wife stumbling out there in her flip flops or her Uggs to throw food.
Geoff, I wanted to end it on the subject of staying involved in falconry clubs and the falconry community.
Okay, my opinion on that is a little nuanced, because, well, let me start off by saying, if you enjoy falconry and you want to continue practicing falconry, you need to be involved and invested in the future of falconry. That means getting together, even if you can't stand the other falconers around you. That means finding common cause. It means, if you're having your petty little pissing matches over John Jones doesn't practice falconry to the standard that I do. He's just a damn pet keeper because he only flies 4 days a week instead of 7 like I do, and that's the right way to do it. Put all that shit aside. You got more in common than you have not, and the more people out there that are working together for the future of falconry, the better. if you have a good, strong club and you can work through a good, strong club, that is the best way to do it because it's a great way to pool resources. But, sometimes you just got to pull together the resources that you do have. When I was in Washington State, I was really fortunate. The Washington Falconry Club in Washington was really strong, had a lot of political savvy, had a great relationship with the state game department. But there were a few times that, despite having that great, strong background,
they fell short a little bit. I mean, every club does that every now and then. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you can't focus on the you can't just focus on what has the club done for me today or what's the club doing for me right now.
Right.
Which we've been guilty of on here too with Nat, or what we think are fair criticisms of NAFA, and the leadership of NAFA thinks it's fair too. It's only John Goodell that doesn't think it's fair. But
NAFA is actually a great example of that. Like, I have seen people
not necessarily about what they're doing for me today. You can't look at it like that. That's narrow-minded.
Right. When I first was involved with the Washington State Club, I was on the board of that club for about 4 or 5 years in the 90s. And I got really fed up because it seemed like everybody in the club leadership and all the club membership were just focused on what I was referring to at the time as the great parties, the summer picnics, and the meets, and the comic book in the form of the newsletter that they sent out. And my view was, there's so many more important things that this club could do, and so many more important ways for them to spend their energy than just focusing so much time on the comic book and the parties. And I used to be a really hardcore partier. I know a damn good party, and those parties that the club was putting on were snoozers.
Right.
But what I came to realize as I matured a little bit is the comic book and the parties, as I was deridingly referring to them, were what provided the social fabric to pull the community together. And way down the road, when I was again on the board of the Falconry Club and working, I was with a group of 4 or 5 people that were working on revamping the state falconry regulations in Washington after the federal rules had changed. When we were revamping the falconry regulations, I realized, because of the comic book and the parties, I knew the community well enough that I knew which personalities to draw from to really effectively push the changes that we were trying to get involved with. And one example that I also wanted to mention, where, sometimes if the club is not stepping up, you can step up anyway and get involved. In 2002, I got a phone call from our state falconry coordinator. This was actually just 2 years after I got my breeding permit. He called me up and he said, "Hey, this goshawk that you have on your breeding permit, I just want to make sure it wasn't taken from the wild in Washington." And I said, "No, it was taken from the wild in Washington." And he said, "You can't do that." And I knew the rules well enough to know he was talking out of his ass. And this is the state bureaucrat guy that's in charge of falconry. And this conversation went on for 2 hours, where he was insisting I take that bird off of my breeding permit because it wasn't legal to breed birds out of the wild in Washington. The way I got him off the phone was I told him, "I'm not taking that bird off my breeding permit. It's perfectly legal. If you want to cite me, send somebody out and cite me." And I hung up the phone on him. And then I immediately got on the phone with Steve and 2 other falconers in Washington who were really well placed, had a lot of political experience working against the state or with the state. And I also called the president of the Falconry Club at the time and told them what was going on. The president of the club and the board of the club had made the decision that they didn't want to buck the system. They didn't want to fight it. If the state wanted to push through a rule change and make it illegal to use Washington state falconry birds taken from the wild in Washington for breeding in Washington, that they would just address it later. And Steve and I, and there was 2 other people involved, and I'm disappointed I can't remember who they are. We fought the state, just the 4 of us.
Mm.
And as a result of that conversation, I should have mentioned this earlier, but as a result of that conversation I had on the phone with that state official, when he realized I was not going to be bullied and pull my bird off that breeding permit that was wild taken in Washington, he went through the process in the state to change the rules to make it explicitly illegal to breed birds from the wild in Washington.
Wow.
And Steve and I, 2 other falconers, a professional lobbyist that I had worked really closely with when I was involved with a hunter advocacy group, we had the state game department absolutely tied up in knots. We played the political game very, very well, very professionally, very savvy. The main thing that worked to our advantage is Steve has the most silver tongue of anybody I have ever met. He's the kind of guy that if fortunately there's not an evil bone in his body, because he could walk into a bank, have the bank manager tell all the tellers to load up his car with all the loot in the safe and drive off and have everybody smiling and waving. He's that persuasive. Steve contacted 4 out of the 9 sitting game commissioners and pled his case for why we should be allowed to breed birds from the wild in Washington, taken from the wild in Washington. And when the game department went to the commission for the vote on that, they lost and we won because we played a better political game than them.
Wow.
But the overall core point, which is pretty damn obvious, or should be obvious to everyone, is all of our privileges. I'm not going to use that word. Falconry is a right. Every person in the United States has a right to go get a falconry permit, but that right comes with limitations. That right comes with your ability to have that permit, and those rights can be eroded at any time. I hate using the term privilege because that implies that we only do this with the blessing of the state. Well, it is still true that we are doing this with the blessing of the state, even if you use the framing of a right, but it puts you in a stronger permission to say that it's a right.
Okay.
And, the importance of the club is the cohesion of the community so that you can fight these issues. And, even that scenario I talked about where I went without the help of the state and worked with Steve to fight this change, that only happened because of the club. I wouldn't have met Steve because of the club. I wouldn't have met the other people that were involved with us pushing on that because of the club.
It's a good point. Yeah.
The club is what forms a strong community. And, in the modern day with social media, you can get a lot accomplished even without the cohesion of a club. But the club is better. The state would rather the state or the federal agencies would rather have one unified group to talk to. When Heath was on, he was talking about how he had gone and met with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to talk about the normalization of the peregrine take, and it was only because NAFA has a cohesive community that they could pull that off.
Yeah.
And it's easy to sit back and say, well, why did it take you 30 years to do this? What were you doing? What were you wasting your time on? But a better stance is to look at what they are accomplishing because they got a lot done.
Yeah, we're right on the verge of getting peregrine take normalized completely, where it's just same as a red tail. You could trap a peregrine, trap a red tail, Cooper's hawk. So that's a huge accomplishment, and it took some time, and some of us, ourselves included on the show, got a little impatient, but once they explained to us,
I guess we're guilty of not really caring about it. We're like, if we want a peregrine, we can get one. But
I can't because I live west of the Mississippi. I can't go trap a peregrine. I can take an IS in the states that allow it, but I can't trap.
Yeah, I think that's how New York is too. New York, you can't have any passage peregrine, period.
But that peregrine example, on that note, it's really important that everybody take 2 minutes out of their day and send in a letter for the comment period on that.
Yeah, when are we supposed to do that?
By the I think the deadline is May 31st.
May. Okay, so
it's a date in May.
Do it. Do it.
So okay, all right. So we're gonna figure that out, Aaron. We're gonna get that. We'll talk to
we already talked to Martin about it. So
no, but there's but there's a comment period, and now we have to.
He said at this point it's a wrap, according to Martin. That unless Audubon Society convinces them otherwise, it's a wrap.
Well, it's still a good idea to be supportive and send a letter into the comments.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
With your influence with your show, if I may be so bold, it would be a good thing to put in the intro to remind people to send in their comments until the deadline comes.
All right, Geoff. Jeff's steering the ship now.
Yeah, Geoff is captain now.
All right. Well, Geoff,
awesome.
Thank you for your time. We still have a lot of stones to turn over, but we're not going to get there today. We'll get there soon enough. Thank you for lending some of your expertise and your...
Oh, no. It's not expertise. Let's not inflate it.
I think it's a little bit of expertise. 30 years of flying Goshawks. I think there's some expertise there.
For sure. Well, we will talk to you soon, Geoff. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.